Hey guys. So, is it the best Christmas pageant ever? Is it the most dangerous Christmas pageant ever? Is it the scariest Christmas pageant ever? Today we find out. This is chapter 7. On the night of the pageant, we didn't have any supper because Mother forgot to fix it. My father said that was all right. Between Mrs. Armstrong's telephone calls and the pageant rehearsals, he didn't really expect supper anymore anyway. When it's all over, he said, we'll go someplace and have hamburgers. Mother said when it was all over, she'd want to go someplace and hide. Well, we've never once gone through the whole thing, she said. I just don't know what's going to happen. It may be the first Christmas pageant in history where Joseph and the wise men get in a fight and Mary runs away with the baby. She might be right, I thought, and I wondered what all of us in the angel choir ought to do in case that happened. It would be dumb for us to just stand there singing about the Holy Infant if Mary had run off with him. But nothing seemed very different at first. There was the usual big mess all over the place, baby angels getting poked in the eye by other baby angels' wings, grumpy shepherds stumbling over their bathrobes, and the spotlight swooping back and forth until you were sick to your stomach. And whoever was playing the piano pitched Away in the Manger so high that we could hardly hear it, let alone sing it. My father says Away in a Manger always starts out sounding like a closet full of mice. But everything settled down, and at 7:30 the pageant began. While we sang Away in a Manger, the ushers lit candles all around the church, and the spotlight came on to be the star. So you really had to know the words to Away in a Manger, because you couldn't see anything, not even Alice Wendelkin's Vaselined eyelids. After that, we sang 2 verses of O Little Town of Bethlehem, and then we were supposed to hum some more O Little Town of Bethlehem while Mary and Joseph came in from the side door. Only they didn't come in right away, and so we hummed and hummed and hummed, which is boring and also very hard, and before long it doesn't sound like a song at all. It sounds more like an old refrigerator. Well, I knew something like this would happen, Alice Wendelkin whispered. They didn't come at all. We won't have a Mary or a Joseph, and now what are we supposed to do? I guess we would have gone on humming until we all turned blue, but we didn't have to. Ralph and Imogene were there all right, only for once, they didn't come through the door pushing people out of the way. They just stood there for a minute as if they weren't sure if they were in the right place, because of the candles, I guess, and the church being full of people. They looked like those people you see on the 6 o'clock news, refugees, sent to wait in some strange, ugly place with all their boxes and sacks around them. It suddenly occurred to me that this must be what it was like for the real Holy Family, stuck away in a barn by people who didn't much care what happened to them. They couldn't have been very neat and tidy either, more like this Mary and Joseph. Imogene's veil was cockeyed as usual, and Ralph's hair stuck out all around his ears. Imogene had the baby doll, but she wasn't carrying it cradled in her arms like she was supposed to. She had it slung over her shoulder, and before she put it down in the manger, she thumped it twice on the back. I heard Alice Wendelkin gasp, and she poked me. I don't think it's very nice to burp the baby Jesus, she said, as if he had colic. And then she poked me again. Do you suppose he could have had colic? I said, I don't know why not, and I didn't. He could have colic, or been fussy or hungry like any other baby. After all, that was the whole point of Jesus, that he didn't come down on a cloud like something out of Amazing Comics, that he was born and he lived, a real person. Well, right away we had to sing While Shepherds Watch Their Flocks by Night, and we had to sing very loud, because there were more shepherds than anything else, and they came in making so much noise banging their crooks around like a lot of hockey sticks. Next came Gladys from behind the angel choir, pushing people out of the way and stepping on everyone's feet. Since Gladys was the only one in the pageant who had anything to say, she made the most of it. Hey, unto you a child is born, she hollered, as if it was for sure the best news in the world. All the shepherds trembled, afraid, of Gladys mainly, but it looked good. Then came 3 carols about angels. It took that long to get all the angels in because they were all primary kids and they got nervous and cried and forgot where they were supposed to go. And they bent their wings in the door and things like that. So we got a little rest then while the boys sang We Three Kings of Orient Are, and everyone in the audience shifted around to watch the wise men march up the aisle. What have they got? Alice whispered. I didn't know, but whatever it was heavy. Leroy almost dropped it. He didn't have his frankincense jar, And Claude and Ollie didn't have anything, although they were supposed to bring the gold and myrrh. I knew this would happen, Alice said for the second time. I bet it's something awful. Like what? Like a burnt offering. You know the Herdmans. Well, they did burn things, but they hadn't burned this yet. It was a ham, and right away I knew where it came from. My father was on the church charitable works committee, and they give away food baskets at Christmas, and this was the Herdman's food basket ham. It still had the ribbon around it saying Merry Christmas. I bet they stole that, Alice said. They did not. It came from their food basket, and if they want to give away their own ham, I guess they can do it. But even if the Herdmans didn't like ham, that was Alice's next idea. They had never before given away anything except lumps on the head, so you had to be impressed. Leroy dropped the ham in front of the manger, and it looked funny to see a ham there instead of the fancy bath salts jars we used for the myrrh and the frankincense. And then they went and sat down in the only space that was left. While we sang What Child Is This?, the wise men were supposed to confer among themselves and then leave by a different door, so everyone would understand that they were going home another way. But the Herdmans forgot or didn't want to or something, so they didn't confer, and they didn't leave. They just sat there, and there wasn't anything anyone could do about it. They're ruining the whole thing, Alice whispered. But they weren't really. It made perfect sense if you thought about it. And I said so. They're supposed to have come a long way. You wouldn't expect them to just show up, hand over the ham, and leave. As for ruining the whole thing, it seemed to me that the Herdmans had improved the pageant a lot just by doing what came naturally, like burping the baby, for instance, or thinking a ham would make a better present than a bunch of perfumed oil. Usually by the time we got to Silent Night, which was always the last carol, I was fed up with the whole thing and couldn't wait for it to be over. But I didn't feel that way this time. I almost wished the pageant would go on with the Herdmans in charge to see what else they would do that was different. Maybe the wise men would tell Mary about their problem with Herod and see if they could go back and lie their heads off. Or Joseph might go with them and get rid of Herod once and for all. Or Joseph and Mary might ask the wise men to take the child with them, figuring no one would think to look there. I was so busy planning new ways to save the baby Jesus that I missed the beginning of Silent Night. But it was all right because everyone sang Silent Night, including the audience. We sang all the verses, and when we got to Son of God, Love's Pure Light, I looked at Imogene and almost dropped my hymn book on a baby angel. Everyone had been waiting all this time for the Herdmans to do something absolutely unexpected. And sure enough, it happened. Imogene Herdman was crying. In the candlelight, her face was all shiny with tears, and she didn't even bother to wipe them away. She just sat there, awful old Imogene, in her crookedy veil, crying and crying and crying. Well, it was the best Christmas pageant we ever had. Everybody said so, but nobody seemed to know why. When it was over, people stood around in the lobby of the church talking about what was different this year. There was something special, but nobody could put their finger on it. Mrs. Wendelkin said, well, Mary, the mother of Jesus, had a black eye. That was special, but only what you might expect. She meant that it was the most natural thing in the world for the Herdmans to have a black eye, but actually nobody hit Imogene, and she didn't hit anybody else. Her eye wasn't really black either. It was just puffy and swollen because she walked into the corner of the choir robe cabinet in kind of a daze, as if she just caught on to the whole idea of God and the wonder of Christmas. And this is the funny thing about it. For years I thought about the wonder of Christmas and the mystery of Jesus' birth and never really understood it, but now, because of the Herdmans, it didn't seem so mysterious at all. When Imogene had asked me what the pageant was all about, I told her it was about Jesus, but that was just part of it. It was about a new baby and his mother and father who were in a lot of trouble with no money and no place to go and no doctor and nobody they knew. And then arriving from the east like a rich uncle from New Jersey came some friends with gifts. But Imogene, I guess, she didn't see it that way. Christmas just came over her all at once, like a case of the chills and fever, and so she was crying and walking into furniture. Afterwards, there were candy canes and little testaments for everyone, and a poinsettia plant for my mother, and the whole Sunday school class put in for it. We put the costumes away and folded up the manger, and just before we left, my father snuffed out the last of the candles. "I guess that's everything," he said as we stood in the back of the church. It's all over now. It was quite a pageant." He looked at my mother. "What's that you've got?" "It's the ham," she said. "They wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't take any candy either, or any of the little Bibles. But Imogene did ask me for a set of Bible story pictures, and she took out the Mary picture and said it was exactly right, whatever that means." Well, I think that no matter what she saw of herself, Imogene liked the idea of Mary in the picture, all pink and white and pure looking and perfect, like she never washed dishes or cooked supper or did anything at all except have Jesus on Christmas Eve. As far as I'm concerned, though, Mary is always going to look a little like Imogene Herdman, nervous, bewildered, or ready to clobber anyone who comes near her baby. And the wise men? Yeah, they'll be Leroy and his brothers, bearing the ham. When we came out of the church that night, it was cold and clear, with crunchy snow underfoot and bright stars overhead. And I thought about the angel of the Lord, Gladys, with her skinny legs and her dirty sneakers sticking out from under her robe, yelling at all of us everywhere. "Hey, unto you a child is born." Well, unto you a child is born, unto you a son is given. Merry Christmas, guys.